The Sherman S was my favorite electric unicycle, released in 2022 against tough competitions like the Motion V13. And now that I have owned and rode one for a year, I have some thoughts since I'm once again making a 60-mile trip upstate to visit my friend. Riding the Sherman S, it's the perfect time for me to tell you all about it. This week, the Sherman S revisited. Roll the intro. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video and help spread the uni gospel. The veteran had built quite the reputation over the past few years in the electric unicycle world, much of it on the back of the legendary Sherman, but I would argue that the Sherman S now has as much to do with that reputation as its predecessor. It certainly had a lot to live up to when it was first released, but it more than delivered and innovated on the original formula. And overall, I think it held up very well under long-term ownership, with one important caveat, and with rumor of its higher voltage follow-up swirling. Does it still make sense to buy the Sherman S a year after its release? And I promise to get to all of that shortly, but first.
Let me holler at the DJ.
So I've been riding my Sherman S for the past year, and for the most part, it remained pretty much stock, with a few exceptions. I, of course, immediately installed Velcro and custom aftermarket pads and replaced the pedals with stronger and grippier one from E-Ride. But the mod that I appreciate the most is probably this aftermarket seat, which was actually taken from a Sauron. And I think it's one of the best mod you can make, because riding seated on the Sherman S is about as close you can get to a couch as you can on a single wheel. You can either just Velcro it to the seat, or in my case, machine screw it to the seat with the help of a Z bracket from my friend George. I like the mechanical connection since it improved weight transfer to the wheel when you ride seated, and it actually also helped when I ride standing up, because I actually grab the nose of the seat with my knee and use it to help with steering. Tighter connection means greater inputs, response, and feedback, but also demands stability and absolute trust in the wheel. And it's here where both the excellent suspension and the weight of the Sherman S comes into play. Also, the reason why I think riding the Sherman S has actually changed how I ride electric unicycle in general. By the way, as mentioned, I'm doing a long distance ride to my friend's place up in Westchester, and he lives about 60 miles north of where I live in downtown New York City. But I'm not even going to bother calling this a range test based on experience that the Sherman S can easily cover 100 miles no problem. Which is also why, as you probably have noticed, that I'm riding the street rather than following the bike path as I have done in the past when I was on a range test, because I really don't have to worry about capping my speed in order to nurse the battery and not overstretch it. And I don't have to worry about like really steep hills either. On the northern end of Manhattan, there are these really steep hilly area, and if you have a smaller battery, you really have to be very careful that you're not taking on too many hill climbs. Which is really a little bit shocking if you think about it, because you got this wheel that's really not much larger than an airline carrying on luggage, but yet it is capable of going for 100 miles. You're not going to find that kind of range when it comes to electric scooter or even e-bikes, and even for electric motorcycle, you'll have to step up to the larger and more expensive models like the Livewire Del Mar, a $16,000 bike. And even then, you will have to really manage your speed so as to not burn too much much of your range. There are really very few options that allow you to ride for 100 miles at a highway speed. By the way, we made it past Inwood on the northern end of Manhattan across the bridge, and now we're in Bronx. The plan is to go through Van Cortlandt Park and catch the Northern County Bike Trail, straight shot up north. It's a very nice, quiet ride that I really enjoy. And I also love rolling through Bronx. I don't know this neighborhood very well. Everything looks just a little bit different up here. There were some grumbling over the Sherman S not being of higher voltage and capable of a higher top speed. But I think part of the reason why the Sherman S is able to be so very efficient is precisely because it is only 100 volt. The 134 volt Master Pro, for instance, although it is capable of similar range, requires a 25% larger battery pack, which of course resulted in larger size and greater weight, and work against the overall electrical efficiency of that wheel. I think for the Sherman S, Redden really found a sweet spot in balancing performance against endurance. I think the Sherman S's top speed of 46 miles per hour is fast enough for the majority of the rider, while all appreciate having a wheel capable of the kind of range it does. And it really changed how I treat this wheel. Most of the time I don't even bother checking how much battery there are left when I take it out for a ride. And as long as I charge it about once a week, the Sherman S never fails to just eat up whatever miles I toss at it. Like, we all have been trained to charge our phone every single night. Imagine if you have a phone with enough battery to actually last you a week. It's nice. Alright, I'm on the northern end of the park. I gotta figure out where it is I'm going. I remember when I did this last time, rode outside of the park, I had a little bit of trouble finding where the entrance to the bike trails are. But it is a really pretty section. I love all the hills up and down here. I'm sure it makes walking around a lot more work, but it's fun to ride an electric unicycle over. Oh my God, look at this hill. It's freaking steep as hell. All right, a little bit unassuming, but this is it. But what's the point of having crazy range if you don't enjoy the ride? And thankfully, the Sherman S deliver on that as well. Similar to the Extreme, which I reviewed recently, the Sherman S is a very balanced and well-tuned. With most electric unicycle, it usually take me a little bit of time to reacclimate when I switch between wheels, especially true when I switch between different size wheels, like between 14, 16, or 18. And over the past few weeks, I've been riding nothing but 16-inch wheels, splitting my time between the Patent and the Extreme. But when I got back on the Sherman S, it immediately felt comfortable. It is a very neutral and stable ride, partly due to its weight and suspension, but the pedal height and weight distribution on this wheel all feel just about perfect. Which is great since it doesn't teach you any bad habits. And what I meant by that is that, for instance, I started my high-speed electric unicycle education on the 9Z10, a wheel well known for its eccentricities. And as a result, I developed a ride style where I hug the wheel casing with my right leg and use my knee to stabilize the wheel whenever I feel a wobble coming. And that wheel really wobbles all over the place all the time. And over time, I can see it evolve into my preference for larger, thicker, and heavier pads, and to lock me in really tight to help me maximize control surfaces. And that is not necessarily the best way to ride a wheel, nor a ride style that fits everyone. And the neutral orientation of the Sherman S means that you have a lot more flexibility to experiment. The other advantage is that it allows you to extract the maximum amount of performance out of your electric unicycle. One downside of self-balancing motion control vehicle is that your stance is linked to your control. If you want to accelerate, you have to lean forward, even if it may not be the best stance for acceleration. On an electric scooter, for instance, you want to get as low and as far back as you can to help maintain
maintain stability and maximize traction. But with an electric unicycle, we really don't have that choice.
Which make wheel stability absolutely crucial to maximize performance. I have no doubt that the Pattern had more torque than the EX30, but I wasn't able to beat its 0 to 50 time with the Pattern because I wasn't able to lean as deep and reach as far since I had less initial stability to push against. And this, the Sherman S, is the most stable wheel even compared to the EX30.
Much of that stability is thanks to what is likely the best suspension system ever paired to an electric unicycle. And it's not just because it's hydraulic. Everything on an electric unicycle have to work in concert as a system. The significant 100-pound weight of the Sherman S means that a regular air shock is probably not going to cut it. And the use of the hydraulic system really turned that liability into a strength. Properly too, it provides just enough dampening to smooth out the ride without feeling bouncy. As a matter of fact, they're in the process of repaving several sections of the avenues here in New York, and riding through those absolutely crater sections of the city, I think I actually had an easier time than even the car I was riding next to. Everyone had to slow down. You can see the hood on all the cars buck as they hit one manhole cover after another. Meanwhile, I'm just floating on by, and it's absolutely beautiful, and I never get tired of it. And it is especially nice when combined with a comfortable seat. Sherman S is not only capable of going for 100 miles, but it also allows you to do so in way more posh than any single wheel device have any rights to.
And it changed how I ride an electric unicycle. I now push a lot harder and lean a lot deeper as compared to before the Sherman S. When I first got the sample of e-ride speed pads from Hafiz, shout out to my own EUC accessory site, themosfet.com, I thought they were too chunky and thick, but as I acclimate to the Sherman S, I started to like them more and more. Their larger base means that I'm able to lean harder without worrying about having them peel off. Nothing worse than having your pads shift or having to stop every so often to re-stick the Velcro. I'm almost at the point of wanting to fasten my pads to the wheel via screws, which is also why I really like the built-in toe pads on the Pattern.
Unfortunately, this is exactly what I was worrying about when I left my apartment this morning. It's been a little bit wet here in New York, and when I say little, I mean it's been raining non-stop for the last few weeks. And as a matter of fact, it rained so much yesterday that it flooded all the subway system, shut down MTA, and the city declared a state of emergency. So I was a little bit worried whether or not my trip up north would still work, and this is what I ran into. At least in this section is completely flooded, so I'm gonna have to go around. But the one thing I wasn't worried about is whether or not the Sherman S would be able to handle riding in the rain. At $4,000, it is one of the most expensive electric unicycle you can buy. Even a year later, since release, there have been very few discounts, unlike many of its competing wheels from companies like Bago. But for that premium, you do get one of the best built and engineered electric unicycle available. It is thoroughly waterproof, and I am not at all concerned about riding it in the wet. As a matter of fact, I regularly do so on my commute to work, as well as when I do longer rides like this. As long as you're properly geared, it's actually quite enjoyable to ride in the rain. The rest of the wheel also held up pretty well. I had a few minor drop and low speed crashes, and for the most part the nylon handles took the brunt of the hits, and maybe there's a few minor scratches, and that's about it. The custom magnesium shell is a significant upgrade compared to the aluminum one from all the other electric unicycle. It is both lighter and stronger, and also allow a lot more flexibility when it comes to how it's shaped. Why the Sherman S is one of the few wheels that have this nice chamfered streamlined look, which will look nice and help with ergonomic, but more importantly help with the durability of the wheel in the crash. Electric unicycle tends to tumble when crash at a high speed, and when you're rolling, the corners are what usually take the majority of the impact, and the integrity of the casing is absolutely crucial since they protect the battery, which is sensitive to any sort of moisture or impact. So what do I not like about the Sherman S? It's really hard for me to find fault with this wheel without just sounding petty and nitpicking.
It is heavy and you feel it at speed, and it's nowhere as maneuverable as the latest batch of 16-inch wheels, but that is more of a function of the physical limitation associated with a larger diameter wheel, and if you're looking for agile grocery runner, the Sherman S is a bit overkill.
And sure, I like more top-end speed, 55 miles per hour would be nice, but I really appreciate the range on the Sherman S, and I wouldn't want to make that trade. And of course, there's the persistent rumor that Veteran is building the follow-up to the Sherman S, a 134-volt 18-inch wheel. But the question is, do you really need 55 miles per hour top speed? Well, I do, but I am a terrible example. You should not do what I do, kids. I also think that higher voltage wheel serves a very different purpose. I've noticed a shift towards higher speed track racing in the past year as more and more PEV gathering turning to more organized races that is starting to gather sponsorship as well as an audience, and a dedicated track wheel present a whole slew of different requirements, and that is not what the Sherman S is. Instead, it is a fun, reliable, and comfortable wheel to ride and capable of a surprising amount of speed and range. It's not going to be all things to everyone, and there are going to be wheels that's better designed for more specialized purposes, but the Sherman will remain the standard that every other electric unicycle is measured against.
So what do you think? Is the 100-volt Sherman S just the long-range wheel you need, or is 134-volt speed and power worth the trade-off in range? Well, that is what the comment section below is for. You know what? Once again, I rambled on too long and somehow managed to waste another 15 minutes of your life, but I hope you enjoyed it. Shout out to my supporter on Patreon. Please check out the link in the video description below if you enjoy and like to support my work. And as always, as much as we all love Electric Unicycle, the only way for us to get better wheels is to grow as a community. So tell your friend, teach them how to ride, and get them hooked. Until the next video, thank you.
Body work will set you free. No, I won't.